Are you okay with the captions? Okay, great. I didn't catch you coming in, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. So have you heard the one about the cat and the guru, the Zen master? So there was a Zen master, and he would go around and teach from village to village, and he happened into this one small village, and it just so happened that a little kitten happened to show up in the village at the same time. And this little kitten would go into the meditation room, and as the master was teaching and starting the morning meditation, the kitten was crawling all over everybody, and including the master, who it turned out had some allergies and started to sneeze. So, not to interrupt the meditation, the master ordered that the kitten be tied up during the meditation practice outside. This was a long time ago, I know. Anyway, the master enjoyed this village so much that he decided to stay, and so this ritual continued. Every morning, the villagers would get up and they would tie the cat up outside of the meditation room so the master could lead the meditation. Well, a few years passed in this way, and then one day, sadly, the master died. But for some reason, the disciples continued the practice of always tying up the cat outside during the meditation. Several more years went by, and eventually the cat died. But not to be deterred, the villagers got another cat so that they could tie the cat up before meditation practice. Now, centuries went by, and learned descendants of the spiritual teacher began to write scholarly treatises about the religious significance of tying up a cat during meditation practice. They demanded that it was indeed an integral part to their enlightenment. And future disciples began to argue about the right way to tie up a cat for meditation, to ensure a good meditation session. And eventually, the community split in two. Some saying the cat had to be tied to a tree with a 3-foot rope, just as it had always been done since the master's time, while others arguing that any length of rope would do, and the cat could now be tied to a table. One small rebellious group broke away, insisting that it was one's personal choice about whether to tie up the cat or not. And so it goes. Rituals get created, they get codified, they wrung dry of true meaning, if they ever had any at the beginning. Now, I wonder if any of you have ever encountered any rituals like that, where you're really questioning, where did this come from? Why are we doing this? Does it have meaning? Nobody? Anybody? A few? And yet I think rituals are all around us, and I think it goes without saying that humans are ritual-making creatures, aren't we? We love to create ritual. Research has consistently showed that every human society, without a single exception, across all of time, has engaged in some kind of rituals. One of the oldest that was found by archaeologists was in Botswana and is said to be 70,000 years old. They found evidence of spearheads being placed and offered to a stone python, and imagined the ritual that was. Archaeologists suggest that throughout time, rituals often take place when humans face situations where the outcome is important, although uncertain, where the outcome is beyond our control. And so we create ritual to somehow create some control around this. And death, I think, is a perfect example of that in all cultures. All cultures have different rituals around death. One of the most intriguing death rituals I experienced or got to witness to took place in India when I traveled to India. Now, running through a city known as Varanasi is a river called the Ganges. It's also called Mother Ganga because it's a really sacred river in honor of the goddess Ganga. And this is a sacred water where people are said to go to purify themselves, to relieve themselves of sin or wrongdoing. So if you go there on the banks of these river, or they call them ghats, but basically they're these stone walkways that go down to the river every 100 feet or so. And each of these places is places you'll see pilgrims and spiritual seekers coming down in the mornings and bathing themselves ceremoniously to cleanse themselves each morning. But one particular god is especially sacred, and it's known as the Manikarnika god, or the burning god. And if you're blessed, what happens in India, you may be able to go there at your death, and loved ones will do a ritual as you burn. So they have these big pyres of wood, and individuals are placed. And there's I think about a dozen were at the Marni Karnita Ghat. And the fire for the ghat is lit by the same fire for everybody. And you go up these steps, and there's this stone kind of temple. And the fire that's in there is said to have been burning for thousands of years nonstop. So there are people whose sacred job it is to keep this fire burning 24/7 every day. And the people I talked to said nobody knows of a time where it ever went out. And indeed, it was said that it was thousands of years ago. And so during this ritual, the eldest male son, or male relative, goes up, takes their journey up to get the fire, and then brings that fire down to light the fire, and they do prayers as the body burns. And it really was an amazing thing to witness. Now, it is noted that this was a ritual for men only, but I was told that the women have their own rituals at home, awaiting for the men to come back. So in our country, of course, we don't have a sacred river or burning ghats, but we all know that we have so many rituals around death, and we know that this is so important. I don't know if anybody's had this experience of not having a ritual when somebody has died. Have you had that experience? It really, it feels like this hole, right? When my own father died, my mother did not want to have a service of any kind. And that had also been this decision several years earlier when my brother died. His wife and my parents said no service because they weren't religious. And when my brother died, I let that happen. But when my father died, I recognized the hole that I still had from my brother. So I told my mom, no, we had to do something, anything. And that something that we ended up doing was just a bunch of people getting together and picking blueberries, and we made this wonderful blueberry pie, which was his favorite, and we had steaks that we made out on the grill, and we all ritually had to drink his favorite beverage, which very sadly was a Budweiser. That's love, right? And we put up some photos and some candles and shared memories, and it really did help a lot. I recognized the difference between that simple ritualistic act versus when my brother died and we hadn't had that. Because death is one of those beyond our control events, and I think it really does demand some kind of ritual. But not every ritual opportunity is about those big life moments. Sometimes rituals serve just to simply bring us more into seeing that sacredness in life, right? That sacredness that is always there, but it's like we fail to see it. And sometimes we don't even recognize that we're creating rituals. Now, I raised my two daughters in a spiritual yet very secular home. We did Christmas and Easter as secular holidays, and they were surrounded by, Eastern iconography and lots of Sanskrit names that we called each other, and meditation and yoga and all that. But we didn't do a really good job, I didn't think, in retrospect, of creating ritual around any of those things. They were just part of the kids' lives. And I remember well the day a friend asked me in the presence of my daughter what rituals we did for Christmas. And I said, well, we really don't have any rituals that we do. And my little 8-year-old daughter piped up and she said, yes, we do, Mom. And then she proceeded to outline our usual Christmas, how her and her sister always got a small gift at Christmas Eve, and how we had a meal with friends of homemade pasta. And keep in mind, at this point, I think we had maybe done this pasta thing 2 years in a row. But for her small life, that was enough. That was like, no, this is how we do it. And she told this friend about the ritual way that they got up in the morning and got dressed and opened the presents and the whole 9 yards. And I haven't thought of it before that, but in that moment I realized my daughter really did want and need, and really was on the lookout for rituals in her life. In fact, to this day, it ain't Christmas unless Mama makes homemade pasta, right? I did try 1 year to not make it. It did not go well. Now, we could say that my example of this pasta thing is a tradition and not a ritual, and I'm going to give you that to a degree. I do traditionally now make pasta for Christmas Eve, but that's a tradition. But I want to talk more about how and why I make it, and you can tell me whether it's a ritual or a tradition. Because making pasta for Christmas Eve isn't something I do alone. It requires everyone to be around the table, and everyone's given a little pile of semolina or other flours that I'm using. You make a hole in the middle, and we make water pasta in our house. So from a communal pitcher, it has to be from the pitcher on the table, everyone pours water into the hole, and then you swirl it around and you start to make your dough. You make your dough and you knead your dough. And after you knead it for a little bit, you take it in half. And you have to take half and give it to the person to your left, and then you receive half from the person to your right, and you combine those. You knead, 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 do it again. And we make sure we do this passing of the dough enough times so that everybody in the circle has now touched everybody else's dough. And really, the DNA of everybody is now within that dough. And then we roll it out and make the pasta. So is that a tradition, or is that a ritual that we do? I love this quote from author Christina Baldwin, who says this. She said, "Ritual is the act of sanctifying action, even ordinary action, so that it has meaning. I can light a candle," she says, "because I need light, or because the candle represents the light I need." Right? I love that distinction. We could be making pasta in my house because we like carbs, and indeed we do. Or we could be making pasta because it represents our communion ritual for that holiday. Indeed, I could see that my daughter's descriptions were not about tradition, they were about something deeper for her. They invited her into a new space and like a new mindset. And I think they helped her shift from what I would call normal times, when we do things in a normal way, to sacred times, when we do things with a little bit different purpose. Getting dressed for Christmas Eve dinner, having those friends over, it all meant that life was shifting, right? It's like she got on alert. It was like, oh, what am I noticing now? Do you know those moments in life where you're like, all of a sudden you notice something? It's right there in front of you, and you didn't notice it, and then you like noticed it. And I feel like this is what ritual invites us into. It's like, notice. Notice. Notice what's here. Have you ever, I know I've talked about this before, like how I love losing my car keys or something, because when I find them, I'm always like, what else is right here in front of me that I'm missing? What else is right here? It just took a shift for me to see the keys. It took a shift for me to see that kindness. It took a shift for me to see, right, that thing that was always right there in front of me. So ritual really serves to invite us into like, hey, it's like the sacred calling out, I'm here. Are you noticing me? I'm here. Michael Norton, who's a researcher and author of a wonderful book called Ritual Effect, says this, and I love this. He says habits, he's talking about the difference between habits and ritual, because we could say some of this stuff is just the habit of how we do it. But he says habits automate us and rituals animate us. Right? Isn't that a great distinction? So I'm going to invite you to take a moment right now and just think of the rituals in your lives that you have participated in. There's probably been some big ones, some funerals, weddings, maybe a bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah. You know, maybe you do rituals around the changing of the seasons. Maybe you've done that ritual where you light candles on a cake and sing that song that nobody sounds good while trying to sing. Right? Think about all those different rituals that you've engaged in and ask yourself, which ones have automated me? I do because I'm supposed to. And which ones really animated me? Not because the ritual was in any certain way, but because of how I brought myself to that ritual. And then think of smaller, perhaps more personal daily or weekly rituals that you do. Are there things that you do again and again that enliven you, that bring a deeper awareness to your life? Maybe it's simply how you brush your teeth in the morning or prepare your bed at night. I'm not sure when it started, but my husband and I have a ritual of always stopping at the bottom of a set of steps. And he'll turn around when he gets to the bottom, and I stand on the step above him, and we hug and we kiss and we say, I love you. So even if he's in the other room and I come down the steps in the morning, if he hears me coming down a set of steps, he like races over. I always am standing there because I learned not to leave the steps. And we have our moment together. And maybe it was a habit in the beginning, but it really has become this ritual. It's this ritual where we say to each other, I see you, right? We're not willing to start our day or even pass by any random set of steps without having that moment of just that little shift, that little shift. So maybe you have some of those things in your life too, that little moment where you're like, yep, I'm gonna just take this moment and shift. Norton adds this, he says, habits and rituals can look exactly the same. It's not that they are different movements. He goes on, he says, if you observe people practicing, did I lose this? If you observe people practicing their religion, some of the people there are practicing their faith in a very deep way that connects them to generations of their family, to spirituality, to that which is moving within them. And other people, they're just there because their parents told them to. They're just there going through the motions. Right? Norton would agree with Joseph Campbell, who wisely wrote, the function of ritual is to give form to human life, not in a way of a mere surface arrangement, but in depth. So we do all these things on the surface of our lives to construct it in a deeper way, right? We go through all these motions. Look at how we light the candle in the morning, right? In our chalice. So many times I have people coming to me from that have come to Unitarian Universalism from other traditions, and they often say something like, I really don't agree with the theology, with the doctrine of my former faith, but I do miss those rituals, right? Maybe some of you are those people. Those rituals that really called to them. And I wonder sometimes if it's not so much that as Unitarian Universalism that it's not that we don't have rituals, it's that I think we're not as explicitly naming them. I think we're not as explicitly inviting people into how do we light the chalice? What are we doing when we say those chalice lighting words? When we light these candles for joys and sorrows? Do we allow ourselves to be shifted in that ritual? Or is it just something we're getting through because we're waiting for the sermon, right? Or the coffee hour, or whatever it is. Norton actually did an interesting experiment. He gave two groups of people a bar of chocolate. And to one group of people, he said, just eat the chocolate. And then he asked afterwards, how much did you enjoy the chocolate? And they, put it on a scale. And the second group was given a little ritual to do with their chocolate. They were told to unwrap half of it, wrap the other half up, eat that half, and then slowly unwrap this half. And they had this little ritual to do. And wouldn't you know that afterwards, their level of satisfaction that they shared from that chocolate was so much higher than the first group, even though it was the exact same chocolate. They said that they were worried that it was just about chocolate, so they did the experiment with carrots, and it turned out the same way. Ritualistically eating a carrot, slowing down, savoring it, being really present with it, just really increases our level of satisfaction. Starhawk once wrote, any ritual is an opportunity for transformation and has power, but if you aren't willing to be changed by the ritual, don't do it. And sometimes I want to say to committees and groups here at Westminster and every UU congregation I've been into, don't light a chalice before the meeting if it's just an automated thing that you're told that you should do. Light that chalice before the meeting because you are setting a space and you're declaring we are now shifting our attention and our focus. We have ministry to do together, and we're going to set that space and intention and invite everybody to take their focus from the busy world or their external world to coming together, right? When we do a little check-in with each other, we're like, how was your day? How was your day? Sometimes we can just blow through that. Oh, I'm fine. I did this, I did that, right? But sometimes the opportunity there is to really make that a ritual. Let's slow down. Let's listen. How are you today? What is in your heart and mind, right? We don't often get that chances in our lives, right? Most of life just keeps on going on and on and on. The truth is, I don't know what happens when somebody dies, but I do know that every single time, if I've gotten together with other people and I've sang songs and I've lit candles and I've gone to a graveside or I've drinking a Budweiser, something happens, and that death doesn't feel quite as overwhelming. I know that for me personally, when I wake up in the morning, if I take a little time to start my day with my ritual, I have a tea ceremony ritual I do. If I really do that and take time to not just drink a mug of tea, but actually have tea ceremony, what a different day I feel like I'm entering into. It just feels a little less scary. And I would say right now in this society, none of us know what's happening moving forward with the craziness that's happening in our government, right? There's so much unknown. And so why not use more ritual? Letting, when you come to church on a Sunday morning, be your ritual. How do you get up and get ready for church on Sunday morning? How do you drive? Is driving here kind of like the labyrinth? I'm entering, right? Like here I go, I'm going through these roads, I get my name tag, okay, I come in. Doesn't this look like the center of a labyrinth? Right? I just got chills. Like it's really beautiful. Like this is the center of our labyrinth, and we take this journey through our lives and we come here and we sit here together and we do this and we allow ourselves to what? To go through motions if you want to, or we really allow ourselves to listen, right? I'm here to listen. What is it that Spirit wants to tell me? What is that deeper self, my deeper self wants to communicate to me that I'm not always listening for? Where is the sacred that I'm missing? One of my mentors, when I was becoming a minister, I loved one sermon she did, and she talked about this. She said she feels like the number one job of a minister is to say, look, there's the sacred. Look, there's the sacred. And like our job is just to remind you, to remind each other that it's all around us. And we just need tools to help bring us into that. So I'm going to leave you with this quote from one of my favorite poets, David White, who says this. He says, "We almost always find that what troubles us on the surface is actually underneath it a deep well of nourishment. Often we just need to drink from that well instead of turning away from what looks like troubled surface." So I invite you to use ritual in your everyday lives, to engage with ritual in a way that really touches you and touches your soul in the little ways, but then also as we join together in community. Let's share our pasta, right? Take it around and around. So may it be.